that specific?
We can always cut stuff out.
Okay.
I'm really excited for this video today because we're going to be talking about something that's very easy for me to talk about, the drop of a hat, and that is my children's birth stories. So, Iris just had her first birthday. I decided that around their birthdays this year, I was going to film their birth stories. So, this is Iris's story. Back up barely a year ago. It was hot and smoky, and we were scheduled for a repeat C-section pretty much only because I had gestational diabetes and my doctor didn't want to risk anything going wrong with a TOLAC, which is trial of labor after cesarean. She was willing to give me that up until about, when was it that I did my glucose test? It was like 28 weeks. Yeah, like the end of my 28th week. Did my glucose test and I failed it. So my chances for a VBAC went to 0. Unless I spontaneously had a really quick labor at home, and that didn't happen. So her C-section was scheduled for a week before her due date, and she was due the 9th of September. And it was really early. They had told us Thursdays were a good day for the operating room. I wasn't really sure what that meant. Maybe they're not all backed up. So Thursday, so we were the first operation of the day, which I thought was pretty good because then, like, you know, the doctors will be fresh, you rested. And what were your thoughts, like, about having to be at the hospital at, what was it, like 5:30 or 5? I think you had to be there at 5 to check in and get one more non-stress test done, one more of like 1,000 that I had to do because of the diabetes. So I had to, you know, be hooked up to a monitor. They had to do a quick ultrasound just to make sure she was presenting in the same way, head down and everything, and see if her vitals were good. So you're not a morning person?
No.
No. So getting up that early, it was hard for me, but it was even harder for you. So yeah, so we got there to the hospital and it was dark, and we had left Caspian at home with Nana and Papa. Watch him for what we thought would probably be 2, maybe 3 days. Just, you know, they kind of see how you're doing after a surgery like that. So we tried to just walk in the front door of the hospital, not thinking that, hey, it's not exactly business hours right now, so the doors were locked. And so that was weird. And that was the first time that I realized there was an intercom on the wall, because the front desk person way on the inside saw us trying to open the door and pointed to the intercom. So we told them what we were here for, and then, silly us, we tried to walk in and just like walk past the front desk to the elevator, because that's what I was instructed to do by my doctor the day before. And and they held us up like, oh, what are you here for? You know, you need to check in first. And it was like, oh, okay, I didn't realize we had to do that. You know, so got upstairs to just the maternity ward, I would say. What was cool was they were expecting us, and we were like the only activity going on that I could see in like the maternity ward of that floor. And so we got all the attention that early in the morning. What was really cool was after they got me set up monitoring Iris, they had another nurse come in to put my IV in, and that was Nancy Jacobs from Holy Trinity. I don't think I had ever really gotten to talk to her at church, and so we spent a little while talking, and it was really nice. And she even talked to me about her kids and everything, so That was fun. She also has a son named Caspian. Then my doctor came in around 6:30, I would say, and went over the procedure with us and asked if we had questions or concerns or anything. Everything was pretty much fine. And so pretty soon, after I had gone to the bathroom for the last time and all this, last minute stuff, they put me in a wheelchair, took me to a special elevator that was not for public use. It was kind of like the back way through the hospital, like to the operating rooms and stuff. So that was cool to see. You don't see that side of the hospital all the time. And as far as I could tell, the operating room was in the basement. Is it in the basement?
Probably.
Although there was a lot of light coming through. They had windows, but basements have windows. So anyway, we went first to the recovery room down there. And then the anesthesiologist came in. His name was Robin. And he was the nicest guy, wasn't he? He was just so nice. Do you remember him?
Was he there during the operation?
Well, yeah, because he was the anesthesiologist. So he's just like, so he said, he was like, okay, like, let me know if you need anything. I'll be the one sitting behind you. So, yeah, he was a nice guy. Oh, do you remember when one of the nurses asked, like, do you want any specific music for the, while the operation's going on?
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't choose. I had 2 different Pandora stations in mind because they were going to use Pandora. And so I was thinking, well, I could go with Enya or I could go with Nickel Creek, like both those. Both of them are very relaxing for me. Wouldn't mind her being bored to any of those songs. But, so it took me a while. I was like, when I'm put on the spot, I can't make decisions very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
After a while, I decided Nickel Creek would be our best option. Since Craig, you didn't care either way, yeah. So, but it was a difficult choice. I'm surprised at how difficult it was to make that choice. And then you said, wouldn't it be funny if they put Nickelback on instead? And then, did the nurse overhear us, or did we speak up about it?
I don't know if they overheard or not.
I think
we mentioned
sure.
something, and then you managed to clarify.
Yeah. She said, "Oh, I'm
Nickelback."
so glad you said something because I was actually thinking Nickelback. I don't like Nickelback, so that would have been a terrible thing to happen. But it still would have been fun. It would have been fun to laugh about it. But I mean, afterwards, so they got that played. And of course, the first song that came on was The Lighthouse's Tale. It's like the most popular Nickel Creek song, I feel like. So it's algorithms and everything. Of course, that's going to come on first. I can pretty much guarantee that. I was thinking it would make me like cry like happy emotional tears if Iris was born to this song When You Come Back Down. I don't think you've ever heard it. It basically talks about you have to let someone young and probably naive go off into the world on their own, spread their wings, make mistakes, because you have to let them do stuff themselves at some point. The song, he was saying, "I'll be right here when you come back down." I was thinking, oh my gosh, I've had thoughts about Caspian already while listening to that song. Wouldn't it be something if she was born when that song was on? Didn't happen. That song came on a couple songs before she was born, when they were still doing more of the initial cuts and everything. I'm glad I got to hear that song, and it did make me feel a little emotional, but I was surprised that I was not more teary than I was, because I think that's probably just the state of things. You're being operated on. It kind of like just puts a lot of things on hold. Most of what I felt was a lot of numbness, and just mentally, physically. But I started to, I can't remember the order of this, where I You remember when, okay, did I panic first or did I get nauseous first?
I would assume you got nauseous first. No reason to panic unless you were feeling something weird.
No, but
you were feeling something weird and then you started to panic over that.
Yeah, so I was feeling nauseous, but it was weird. The panic was not in my mind at first. The panic was, my body felt like it was panicking. And I can't really describe that, but like, I don't know, my body was panicking in some way. And then I started to think, should I be worried about this? Because, like, I don't know, like your body, panic usually indicates that there is a danger in the fight or flight reflex type of thing. So I was thinking at that time, is there something going wrong? Should I be worried about something? Because even up to the minute that operation started, I was cool as a cucumber about being operated on in that way because I had already done that with Caspian. I wasn't concerned about it at all. And I started to feel panic. I started to think, well, maybe there's something that's gonna go wrong or something. But yeah, I started to feel nauseous, and then my body started trying to throw up. There was nothing to throw up because they have you fast overnight. That scared me a little bit because I thought, okay, is like my body trying to throw up gonna move enough to where it's gonna mess up what they're doing? They're gonna cut the wrong thing, or like so. And you were actually really good at being calm for me. Was it because the last time didn't work out that way, or they know what they're doing, you're gonna be okay, there's no need to panic? You were telling me all this stuff, and I somewhat was able to hold it together because you said all that stuff. And I kind of wondered, like, if I can't control my thoughts and my body soon, what does that mean for Craig? Because he can't, hospitals are already not your favorite thing. So, probably one of your least favorite things. But, so I didn't want to let this panic get out of control to where he would start panicking. But that's probably what ended up happening, wasn't it? Well, okay, so it wasn't panic for you, but what was it?
No, it was probably a number of things. I already don't like hospitals. Don't like doctors. Don't like operating tables. Majority of the time, I have a lot of... When she was pregnant and we knew she was going into a C-section, I had a lot of random thoughts of, what if she dies on the table? What am I going to do then? So constantly had that going through my mind a lot. And no amount of comfort helps me with that. Those are just thoughts that always happen. So we get into the operating thing, and I'm delayed because I have to put on all the cleaning stuff while they're prepping her for all the surgery. And then once they get her all prepped up and everything set up, then they finally let me in. So I go in there. She's already kind of like dazed a little, and then is starting to freak out, and I'm there holding her hand, trying to keep her comfort because I don't want her to panic, because if she panics, that kind of complicates some things. And then at the same time, I'm also trying to fortify my mind, because the as you'll find out in the next video, I passed out when Caspian was born. And so I was trying my best not to pass out on this one. Everything seemed to be going all right until just all of a sudden I think they stopped the music for a little bit so that they could concentrate. And then the tension of the room just completely changed.
Okay, that's what did it for you. Okay.
Yeah, and then that's when I started to panic.
They stopped the music?
Yeah, because they needed to concentrate.
I did not notice that they stopped. Okay, so you know what I was focusing on the whole time?
My pretty face.
I could not turn my neck enough. I couldn't see you. I saw you out of the corner of my little eyeball. But no, what was in front of me Like, this close to my face was a blue disposable drape. And I was like looking at the square pattern on it. That's how close to my face it was. Like, okay, I guess we're doing this now. And if I looked above it, I saw like the big giant circle operating light hanging from the ceiling. And I had weird thoughts, you know, before the height of the panic. I had weird thoughts when I was trying to distract myself. Because it takes a good like 20 minutes maybe before they're at a point where they can pull the baby out. They have to get through layers and stuff carefully. I was thinking as I was looking up at this bright operating light, like, I've watched medical shows and now I'm like here, you know, even though it was the second time, I'm not sure I focused so much on that the first time. But since my mind was more like, been here, done this, I'm just going to try and find a way to pass time. Like listen to the song. Like I kind of like not hear the songs after a while. Maybe that's why I didn't realize they turned it off. But like, it was hard to hear at some points because it was not very loud. Like, you know, they need to concentrate. So I would look around and it was just like a really weird like, wow, I am like actively being operated on. That's like a weird thing to realize. Because usually people are put under for that. But not this type, unless there are big complications, which there weren't. But okay, so they turned the music off. That's the next thing we're going to talk about. I know why they did that. I just didn't realize they had done that. Did I panic before, or
you were starting to panic before because you were feeling nauseous and weird.
And so I think Robin, the anesthesiologist, he put stuff in the IV to help, because he did tell me beforehand in the recovery room when he asked if there were questions or whatever, he did tell me, you know, there was a chance that the whole cocktail of stuff you get in your IV during an operation can make people feel nauseous. And so me, you know, like, oh, I've had a C-section before, like I didn't react that way last time. And so when I felt nauseous, that was kind of alarming, because I was like, well, why? Like, why do I feel nauseous? And I didn't connect the two. So I think one thing that would have helped is if I had remembered, oh, he said this happens sometimes. And he also said to let him know if I need anything, so I could do that. I didn't connect it. I was like, well, I feel nauseous and my body just feels like it's panicking and like tensing up, maybe. I don't know exactly what happened at that time. Of course, I couldn't move the majority of my body to be able to like get myself off the operating table if I was panicking. I mean, they do strap your arms down for a reason, so because that's like part of you that's not numb. And I did ask him at one point, like, my chest feels kind of numb, like it's hard to breathe. Is that okay? Like, is that normal? And because I have really had that bad with Caspian. So I knew from the past that that was something that was scary that could happen. He said, okay, I can like adjust the angle of the table or something, right? To, so that not the epidural, it was a spinal block. They did just like one little in my back, and it like trickled down into my legs, and then like, it was really fast. Spinal blocks are less painful, easier to place as far as I can tell, because it's not like an actual catheter type thing that stays in you. It's just they're injecting something into you. So and it takes effect a lot quicker. I think he adjusted the angle of the table so that it wasn't like pooling up at the top of me so much, something like that. He did what he could to help me. And so that all happened right before she was born. And then I remember from when she was born, when Dr. Beardsley said something like, here she is, or something like that. And so then I thought, like, okay, and now I'm going to wait for her to cry, and then everything will be fine. Because I did that with Caspian. Because that's just what you're used to. Like, from watching shows and stuff, it's like, okay, as soon as the baby cries, you know that they're fine. And life moves on. And I didn't even have to wait. It was like, the thought came into my mind of like, okay, now I'll wait for her to cry. And it's like, oh, she's like screaming her lungs out. already. Like, there was no waiting required. But she's such a different kid than Caspian that I'm not surprised. She's just, she didn't hide how she felt about things. So, so she was fine. We knew she was fine. The nurses took her. They didn't like hold her up for me to see, as far as I know.
I wasn't there.
Oh, you were already taken out by that time?
Yeah.
No, you weren't. I remember. Because, no. You, no, she was born. They went, like, weighed her and did other stuff. And then they brought her wrapped up back around and said, "Are you ready to hold her?" Because one of the things that I had in my birth plan was, if possible, like if everything's going okay, can you bring her and unstrap one arm so I can like hold her for a little bit? And, you know, while they finish stitching stuff up and everything. And they said, yeah, sure, we can do that. That was the plan, and they came around after a few minutes of making, you know, doing the APGAR test and everything, making sure she's stable. Then, you know, the nurse said, okay, you ready to hold your baby? And I said, nope, not able, like, I'm sorry, I can't, because it's just, I was still nauseous, and, like, turning my head to try and throw up, and, like, it just, you know, my body did not feel good. And I could barely, like, turn my head anyway. It's just, I couldn't safely do that. And then she turned to you and said, "Daddy, you want to hold her?" And that's when I remember you saying, "I'm not feeling so good either." And I'm like, dang it, Craig, you made it this far. And so, like, that's when I remember them taking you out. And it's like, great. I guess Iris is just not going to be held by us then. But so they took you to the recovery room.
Hmm.
And so the nurse, I think her name was Rachel, really nice nurse. I loved all our nurses. But so she was like, no problem. And so she was like walking Iris around, and they might have like switched with someone else at some point. But Iris would go out of the room, come in the room, and I could hear her no matter where she was because she was loud. So it's like, oh, my poor baby. But at the same time, I couldn't care enough. I was just like, you know what? This is how it's going. I can't do anything about it. So what happened before that was, okay, so this whole time they were operating, the two doctors were on either side of me talking about vacation plans. Oh, my husband likes to go hunting here. And, oh, we just took a trip to Montana or something like that. You know, it was chit chat that's expected when you know what you're doing, you know, and you're just kind of like keeping yourself easygoing. You know, it's not a tense operation. There was nothing. It's very routine. And so what I remember changing was after Iris was out, all of a sudden, at some point, and this is probably when they turned the music off, they weren't having full conversations anymore. I heard a lot of last names and dosages being said. It was tense. And what was happening was I was losing more blood than they expected, right?
Mm-hmm. So,
and they didn't tell me this, but I could kind of gather what was happening. My doctor kept saying, her uterus is just so boggy. She kept saying that every so often, and I was like, I don't know what boggy means, but I don't think that's a good thing. And but I was guessing correctly. It was not contracting and shrinking back down after the baby was out like it usually would, like it's supposed to. So it was a problem because it just meant that the contracting controls the bleeding, and it just it helps with that. So I was not contracting down, and I was just bleeding. So did not happen with Caspian. So I was unprepared for that. But they got it under control, and a couple different times Robin told me, like from sitting behind me, he said, okay, I'm just gonna give you a little shot in this shoulder. And then he came back a little while later. Okay, I'm just going to give you another little shot in this shoulder. And I talked to Rachel afterward, and I said, so, like, what happened in there? Was I bleeding too much? And she said, yeah. Like, yeah, so what happened was, and then she explained it. And I said, okay, so was it like a lot of blood? And she said, it wasn't the worst. Probably like medium level blood loss, but it was definitely more than they expected me to lose. And it showed because they became a lot more focused and fast paced, but not panicked, I would say. Maybe at some point I think that they felt a little panicked, but they did a really good job getting on top of that. So were you in there at all for that part?
No, I was out.
Around already? Okay, well, I remember hearing Iris. Oh, okay, you already are. I heard Iris crying for like 10 or 15 minutes. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, they got everything under control, and then took me back just to the next room, which was the recovery room that I came from. And then I just remember being so thirsty. Like, I could have drank an entire ocean and I wouldn't have been quenched. Like, it was the weirdest, probably due to medications, and because it's not like I was running a marathon. I was just laying there. Didn't need a blood transfusion. So that tells you, I guess. Like, if people lose enough blood, they will need a blood transfusion. I'm just so thirsty. And because you're like post-op, they need to like monitor you without you ingesting things for a while, so they wouldn't let me have water. But after like 10 minutes, I'd say, the nurse that I asked for something to drink, she was like, okay, I'll give you an ice cube. And I was like, please, yes, just put it in my mouth. And like every couple minutes they'd give me another ice cube, and then after a while they gave me my own cup of ice that I like guarded with my life, because other than Iris, I was like, these are the two most important things to me right now, because I was so thirsty. So I held Iris next to me, nursed her, just kept eating ice every so often. We were just there for a couple hours. People talked to us, people monitor us, and Craig got a bed next to me in the other side of the room. It was overall just very different from Caspian's, even though a lot of it was the same. And I think one thing that made a huge difference beforehand was being able, knowing that I was scheduled for another C-section, and having a peace from God that told me, you don't need to fight this. I was told by people, you could just find another doctor. And I was like, definitely at the last trimester, it was within the last 9 weeks, I was not going to find another doctor. Even if I could have, I felt like God was telling me, this is not something you need to fight. This is just something that you need to let happen. I was pretty at peace with that, even though I didn't like it. I was still mad that I had to have a C-section. Again, they wouldn't even let me try. But it was just much more peaceful than trying to fight to have another doctor. Who knows what would have happened if I didn't have that repeat C-section. I mean, possibly something bad could have happened. We don't know. I was able to make a birth plan beforehand, and they did honor a lot of my requests, and I was so thankful, because being in the situation where you don't get to birth the way that you feel comfortable for a woman is a really big deal. And so it's like, as long as I'm in that situation, if I could be accommodated in some important ways, then that made a lot of difference, and it helped so much. There was a lot of healing that came from that, even though it was a more dramatic delivery than Caspian's. There was a lot of healing that I felt from kind of getting the chance to be in control of some of it and have it more on my terms. I wouldn't say that it's completely healed up, because that's just something that's going to take time. But it was a really good experience, even so. And our aftercare was over the next almost 2 days that we were there was, I thought it was really good. So the perks of being in a small hospital sometimes is that maybe they don't have everything and they would have to transfer you to another hospital, a bigger one, in an emergency. But we didn't have that situation, so we just had staff all to ourselves. We were the only family in the maternity ward. No other babies were born in the couple days that we were there. And it was like a nice little mini vacation before going back to real life. And so that's the gist of it. There are, of course, more details, but you know, I tried to make this somewhat short. Probably didn't work. But if you have any questions about the birth or the care, the prenatal care beforehand or the aftercare in the hospital, I can fill you in on those details. Just leave me a comment and I'll get back to you. And then join us next month around Caspian's birthday, and we'll talk about his birth experience. But until then, thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.